Okay, so the next talk is going to be given by Maxwell on sequential calibration.
Nice. Hey everybody, my name is Max. Good to talk to you. Very good, man. We're doing calibration. This is joint work with Yuval, Kostis, Noah, Bobby, and Prince Will. All right, so I want to talk about the sign preservation game. But really, I want to play the sign preservation game, all right? So this is a 2-player game, which means I need a volunteer from the audience. Let's go with Natalie. All right, so I'm gonna be the pointer player and you're gonna be the label player, okay? So how this is gonna work is at each round, we're gonna take turns. I'm gonna point at one of these spaces and you're gonna label it plus or minus.
Got it. So I'm going now? Okay, I'll start with plus.
Plus.
Wait, what's my goal in this game?
We'll explain.
Okay.
So, I win the game if I get 3 pluses or 3 minuses down on the board. You want to stop me from doing that, okay? Here's the catch. Let's say that this is the state of the game, okay? If I point at a square and there are any pluses to the right of this square, they're going to get deleted. Deleted. There they are. Similarly, if this is the state of the game, and I ever point at a square, and there's any minuses to the left of that square, they're going to get deleted, okay? This is not in my best interest as the pointer player, right? The pointer player is trying to get signs down on the board. However, sometimes you, as the label player, can force me to delete, okay? So, right, this is the deletion rule, and we're going to play this for 9 turns, okay? Are you ready to play?
I'm ready. So I'm trying to survive for 9 turns.
You gotta survive. Let's see if you can do it. All right, I'm gonna start with this square.
Okay,
Go
I'm
for
gonna
it.
do plus again.
Plus, good choice.
Thank you.
Now I'm gonna point here. Your choice.
Minus.
Minus. All right, you've put me in a spot where I've gotta delete something, right? If I point over here, we're losing the plus. If I point over here, we're losing the minus. C'est la vie. I'm gonna point here. We're gonna lose the plus. All right, your turn.
Okay, I'll put a plus.
Plus. I'm gonna point in the middle.
Okay. Man, let's see. I guess I'll put a minus.
Nice. All right, now I'm gonna point way over here.
Yeah.
We're gonna lose this plus. All right, but now be careful.
Well, all right. I remember rules enough to say that I'm going to put a plus here.
Plus, the minus would have cost you dearly. I'm gonna point here now.
Okay. I still should put a plus.
Gotta go plus. Now I'm gonna
That was
point
getting kinda rough.
way over here. We're gonna lose all these minuses.
Okay.
Now it's your turn.
I'm gonna put a minus.
Minus. Now I'm going here.
I'm gonna put a minus.
Minus. And on the final round of the game,
Oh no.
I'm pointing here.
I'm gonna put a plus.
Plus, there it is. So that was the sign preservation game.
I got that.
So we just played the sign preservation game with 5 spaces for 9 rounds. Now we say that the value of this instance of the game is 3, meaning that if my win condition is 3, if I'm playing optimally, I win. Whereas if the win condition was 4, if you were playing optimally, you would win. That's the threshold, okay? The focus of this paper is understanding for n spaces and t rounds of time, what is the asymptotically optimal value of this game? Okay, why would I care about such a thing? This ties to the question of sequential calibration. Okay, what's calibration? In the setting of calibration, you are a weather person. And every single day, you are tasked with forecasting the rain. So each day, you produce a forecast and then observe this binary outcome, rain or no rain. Write that down. We repeat. Each day you produce a new forecast, observe a new outcome. You do this for capital T days, and your goal is to be calibrated as a forecaster. Meaning that if you look back at all the days you said 20%, it empirically rained on about 20% of those days. If you look back at all the days you said 30%, it empirically rained on about 30% of those days. And the crazy thing is, we want to do this even when these binary outcomes are chosen by an adversary. Adversarial online sequential calibration. So the formal setup is for every day t, we are going to simultaneously produce a forecast and an outcome, the adversary and I. After capital T days, for a given forecast P, I can compute the empirical frequency of outcomes, that is the average of these outcomes over the days I predicted P. And then I can measure my calibration error, which is summing over all the forecasts of the difference between the forecast and the empirical frequency. And this is weighted by how many times I use this forecast. If I forecast 20% the vast majority of the days, that calibration error should be weighted appropriately. Cool. Okay, so that's the definition. So this measure of calibration error was first studied in this adversarial sequential setting by this groundbreaking paper by Foster and Vora. And they devise an algorithm that guarantees a sublinear t to the 2/3 growth rate of this calibration error. That means that the average calibration error over time is sublinear. It converges to 0. So you can literally know nothing about the weather, not look at the clouds, just stay in your home, and use this algorithm, and guaranteed over a long enough period of time, you're going to be a good weather person, which is pretty crazy. On the lower bound side of things, you can't hope to calibrate at a rate better than square root of time. Simply an adversary who just flips a coin every day to choose the rain. Even if I forecast 50% every day, I have to wait for this to concentrate, the empirical frequency. Okay, so there's a gap here. In this groundbreaking paper in 2021, Chow and Valiant proved that actually you can't calibrate at a rate better than t to the 0.52, okay? And they prove this introducing the sign preservation game, okay? What they show is that strategies for me, the pointer player, can be converted into algorithms for the adversary in calibration, getting something better than square root of t. What we do in this paper is further the investigation on the sign preservation game. So not only do we show that pointer strategies lead to calibration adversaries, but actually label strategies lead to calibration forecasters, okay? And then studying strategies for that player, we improve the optimal rate of sequential calibration to t to the 2/3 minus epsilon, where epsilon's about 1/1,000. We also improve the lower bound, and we do so with an oblivious adversary. So this is a pointer player who doesn't even react to whether you choose plus or minus. I'm just going to do whatever I was going to do regardless. Cool. Okay. So the game plan is, I want to quickly talk about a simple proof due to Hart that also recovers this t to the 2/3 for calibration. We'll get a sense of why sign preservation can be used to improve the rate here. And then we'll talk about some of these strategies for sign preservation. Sounds good? Nice. All right. Quick refresher on the minimax theorem. If we have a 2-player zero-sum game, like rock, paper, scissors, we could consider 2 settings. In one setting, we have the 2 players acting simultaneously, okay? In the other setting, we can imagine it as a turn-based thing, where the first player commits to a distribution, the second player responds to that, and then you sample from this distribution, okay? Due to von Neumann's minimax theorem, we know that as long as this adversary chooses this distribution according to the minimax equilibrium, these 2 settings are strategically equivalent. They're going to have the same optimal value, okay? So the same applies for calibration. One setting of calibration is we have every single day the 2 players acting simultaneously. We could instead consider a setting in which on every single day the adversary reveals a Bernoulli distribution. I'm going to choose the weather according to this Bernoulli today. The learner forecaster responds with a forecast, and then we sample from this Bernoulli. Then proceed to the next day where a new Bernoulli is revealed. You respond to this Bernoulli in the history of play and sample, repeating this. Due to min-max, you can show that these are also going to be strategically equivalent. So what we're going to consider for the rest of this talk are algorithms for the forecaster in this calibration setting, okay? And that's going to prove that it's going to also be attainable in this original setting that we described. Okay, so what is Hart's algorithm for calibration, achieving t to the 2/3? It's pretty simple. Every single round, right, it starts with the adversary revealing this Bernoulli QT. What we're going to simply do is take a discretization of our interval and round QT to the nearest discrete forecast, okay? So how do we balance this parameter k? essentially, if k is too small, if the discretization is too coarse, we incur this discretization error every single round, which sums to t over k, calibration error, over 10. On the other hand, you need k to be not so large because we need to play each forecast enough for us to have concentration, right? Even if p and q are on top of each other, remember that this q is then sampled, right? And so we need to play each forecast sufficiently many times to get sufficiently many samples such that the actual empirical average starts to concentrate around p. So this concentration error gives you, square root kt. You balance by setting k to be t to the 1/3. Calibration gets t to the 2/3. Okay, how can we improve this algorithm? Let's say we're running Hart's algorithm. We're at some point in time where the adversary plays this. Hart would prescribe for us to play this action. But what if it's the case that it just so happens to be, at this point in the algorithm, we have some forecast P that has had negative calibration error, right? It's just so happened that it's underperformed on the empirical outcomes over the rounds that we forecast P. What we can do, instead of listening to Hart and playing this action, is instead to play this action. Knowing that, because it's more likely to rain than not on the next round, if we were to play this action rather than doing something new, we're actually more likely than not to delete some of the calibration error off of this action. Therefore, it makes more sense for us to deviate and play this forecast, okay? But more so, what if it wasn't a coincidence that this P existed? What if we intentionally set up some negative calibration error here? What if we modified Hart's algorithm to, instead of playing this P, maybe shifting it over a little bit to the right, intentionally creating a negative calibration error right here, such that anticipating that the adversary was going to point over here later, and we'd be able to delete the minus to the left. Yeah, it's a little sign preservation. Okay, let me just explain the reduction that we get, or just the results therein. Now, sign preservation is parameterized by two things, right? It's parameterized by the amount of space and the number of rounds of learning. Let me just describe the reduction in the regime where space equals time, okay? And spaces and rounds of the game. In this regime, we show that if we have a label player in sign preservation who can keep the number of signs below something strictly sublinear, this is going to give us an algorithm for a forecaster in calibration who keeps the calibration error strictly less than t to the 2/3. Similarly, on the other side of things, if we come up with a pointer player for sign preservation who can force the number of signs to be strictly greater than square root of n, we get an adversary for calibration that gets strictly greater than square root of t calibration error. Cool. Okay. And then we study algorithms for or strategies for these players. I don't have much time, but let's talk about it. So let's start with the label player strategy, forcing a sublinear number of signs in this game. So we're going to have, let's say, n spaces. We're going to describe a strategy for the label player, which constitutes, given a state of the game, here are the signs, that's where the point is. I'm going to output plus or minus. I'm going to tell you what to label in any given situation. Okay, our algorithm is going to be parameterized by two things. It's going to be parameterized by the amount of space that I have, and also a bias that I'm going to call lambda. Okay? I want to prove that my algorithm satisfies the following guarantee. I want to prove that if I run this algorithm for t time steps against any pointer player, I'm going to keep the number of minuses to be at most this, n to the alpha t to the beta, scaled by lambda, and the number of pluses to be at most this. Okay? So what this shows is that if I can prove this guarantee for alpha plus beta less than 1, then if I run this algorithm with lambda equal to 1, I will guarantee both a sublinear number of minuses and pluses. Okay, so lambda equals 1 would be the regime where I'm unbiased between pluses and minuses. I'll explain why there's a bias parameter in just a second. Okay, the idea of our algorithm is to do something recursive. Okay, we're going to have two copies of our n over 2 algorithm in terms of space. One is going to tell me what to do on the left side, one's going to tell me what to do on the right side. Okay, and we're going to prove this by induction. So we assume that these algorithms, with over n over 2 spots, have these guarantees. We're going to try to show the whole algorithm has this sort of guarantee. Okay? So how does the algorithm work? Essentially, the overall algorithm is now just going to keep track of how many times is the adversary pointing to the left and how many times is the adversary pointing to the right. Okay? if the adversary ends up pointing like in an unbalanced way, like way more to the left than to the right, then we immediately get the guarantee we want from the inductive hypothesis. No need to do anything. If you go through this equation, right, like you'll see that, what's the total number of pluses? It's going to be, okay, this desired quantity. There's going to be a 1/2 to the alpha because, we're only on half as much space. But because the, amount of time spent on both sides was imbalanced, you're going to get something like 2/3 beta plus 1/3 beta. There's a way to select alpha plus beta less than 1 to keep this constant less than 1, guaranteeing our inductive hypothesis. Similarly, we're going to succeed no matter what, no work required, if we have an adversary who goes back and forth, okay? Because notice that every time the adversary points anywhere on the left half, all of the pluses on the right half are going to get deleted. And similarly, anytime you have an adversary that points anywhere on the right half, all the minuses on the left half get deleted. So if the adversary is going back and forth, we're going to be left with almost only pluses on the left, almost only minuses on the right. We similarly get our inductive hypothesis for free. Like the number of minuses is going to be, this many on the right side, but nothing really on the left side. And so we're good. The only bad case is the case where we have an adversary who plays a bunch of time on the left, say the whole first half on the left, and then plays on the whole right half for the second half of time. When this happens, again, we're not going to have any minuses over here, right? Those are going to get deleted when we point. But we never deleted any of the pluses, right? We allowed the adversary to build up a bunch of pluses here, and then we only went over to the right side, and all these pluses are stuck. So the total number of pluses naively here would be this quantity, which if you add this up, this is 2 to the 1 minus alpha minus beta. That's greater than 1. So what's the idea of the algorithm? It's specifically, if we were in a case where the adversary built up a bunch of mass on the left side, and then they start coming in on the right side and building up a bunch of mass. As they start to catch up, at this point in the algorithm, we're going to modify our sub-algorithm on the right side and introduce a bias towards minus, okay? We're going to say, I'm actually okay to take more minuses here as long as I can kind of keep like under wraps the number of pluses you're putting down. Because remember, like at the end of time here, we're not going to have any minuses on the left side. So the fact that there's minuses on the right side, even at a larger number, is going to be okay. Yeah, so that's the basic idea of the algorithm. There's a lot more complexity, but hopefully that's a basic idea of what we do. Quick comment on the oblivious lower bound. So this is a pointer player who's not reacting to what the pluses or minuses are doing. They're just kind of pointing according to some sort of random process, ambivalent to the pluses or minuses. For such a random walk, if a plus gets put down, it only survives for the rest of the game if the random walk kind of stays to the right for the rest of time. If a minus gets put down, you have a random walk. It'll only survive if the random walk stays to the left. Okay? So really kind of the understanding of what's in a good oblivious pointer player here is just trying to understand like what's a random walk that at any point in time has a really good chance of staying left and right. Here's one funky thing. If you take steps plus or minus 50-50 according to the largest power of 2 dividing the index of the step size, you're only going to use about linear space for time, and you actually end up getting survival strictly greater than square root. So that's kind of a funky problem too. You can think about it. All right, that's it. Thank you.